And you look at Denmark and Germany and some of those areas over there, what they've been doing this for many years, they've got a very low cost base of energy over there, and it's basically because they've developed these renewable technologies. Or the utilities. The utilities will have a mix in their energy that costs them less as time goes out, again because it drops through the contract, and it mitigates the fuel risk of natural gas. A lot of utilities have been using natural gas, and all of the green values and emissions from fossil fuels. Again, the cost of the energy is the cost of capital. You do not have the long-term exposures. What does it do for the rural communities? Community-based energy development can create hundreds of millions of dollars in economic development, thousands of jobs, and as the GAO report showed, that can have a long-term economic impact to your community. It's not just the flash of the construction jobs, it's the long-term revenue stream of those energy dollars in your community. And from the state standpoint, you get statewide economic development, get new tax revenues from the generation of the income, and the economic development for his ability to attract manufacturing. And we've proven that in Minnesota, because when we were doing some community-based development projects up there, one of the manufacturers came to us and they wanted us to buy their machinery. And we said, well, yeah, we can look at buying your machinery. There was a, what was this project, about $28 million project. And we said, we'll buy your machinery, but we want you to show something to us that you're going to be here for the long run. We want to have you show some presence in our economy also. And so we basically talked them into building a blade plant. And so 2 years after we bought our machines from them, they built a $15 million blade plant and they employ 300 people in Pipestone, which is about 4,000 people in. That's a huge deal. And I can tell you right now, what happened? Oh, wow. I can tell you right now that the others that play in this game do not try to leverage that stuff. They don't care where they get their stuff. They don't know where the job. They don't care any of that. They just want to get the projects, extract the revenue, and go. And now, I'm not saying that these are bad people. They're businessmen, and they're doing what they do as businessmen. And so, you know, don't take this as I'm trying to say that these are bad people. They're not. They're businessmen. But we have to look at this from the standpoint, this is a natural resource that you have. It's a great opportunity that the technology just fits right into the whole mindset of distributive generation and blending into the system, and can be a huge benefit for us as we move on in time. And so if you're going to do wind energy, you should do it that maximizes the local economic value to you in the long run. Because it's too valuable and too important just to say, well, we're just going to do it this way, and who cares who owns it. And you should care who owns it, because it has a huge impact on you and your future and where your energy dollars actually go. So I know I went through the economic part of it kind of quick. And so if anybody has any questions about how we do this community development, or any of those questions, I know the professor said that his class would have some questions. But, sure.
How do you attract the equity partners that have a tax appetite that help make this whole thing happen?
Well, they're out there.
Are there fewer of them right now than there were?
Yes, there are fewer of them out there right now than there were, but there's one thing that you have to think about right now, in the time we're in right now with the stimulus package that was just introduced. The tax credit was split into, there's three ways to utilize the federal incentives. There's the federal tax credit, which is the 2 cents per kilowatt hour, or there's an investment tax credit, which is basically 30% of the investment, or now they have a 30% grant in lieu of that. And so now there's a huge opportunity for community development to utilize that grant in lieu of having to exchange for the tax credit. And so that's a good way to do it. But there is equity out there that has an appetite for this. And we were out in New York not that long ago with some meetings, And we were in this meeting with a couple of fairly large banks, and they said, well, they thought that there's right around $10 trillion in this country sitting on its hands because they don't know what to do about the stock market. They don't know who's this Bernie Madoff guy. And then there's all of these things that are going on. And so people have got money and they want to invest. And if you can come to them with an investment that shows it's the future energy cost, and when you have a power contract with utility, you're basically being able to finance off of that utility's bond rate. And so they are out there. They're not as many as there used to be, because a lot of them, some of them used to be the banks that we hear about these days. But they're out there. And how do you attract them? You just go to find them, I guess.
Is there a downside at all to wind power? I mean, it doesn't sound like there is.
Well, one thing that's always says, well, wind power, what do you do if the wind's not blowing? You know, because it's an intermittent resource. It's not a baseload type of resource. But the system has been designed for intermittency. I mean, the load fluctuates itself all over the place. And, you know, if a pump goes out at a power plant and it shuts down, our lights don't go out. It's because the system has been designed to accommodate for the system for things to vary and move up and down. And so, I mean, if you look at the energy system as a big glass of water, and in the top of that glass you're putting in nuclear and coal and oil and gas and wind, and you're filling up this glass. And at the bottom you have, you know, Omaha and Lincoln and Pipestone and taking the power off. That floats. If a power plant goes down, it drops down. If the wind picks up, it goes up, and it floats. It's part of the power pool. And so wind energy is part of a mix of energy that we can utilize. And if you start combining renewable technologies, our corporate offices in Woodstock, which my son Tyler likes to say that we're the only publicly traded company on the planet whose corporate headquarters is completely off-grid. And he's right, we are. But we are that way because we use wind, small wind, and solar together with small storage, because it's either windy or sunny. And so you start combining some of these renewable technologies and they become very reliable. And if you think about system peak, when is the system peak? On the hottest, sunniest day of the year. That's when it happens. And so that's when solar power is doing its greatest work. So you start thinking about that and putting these together, and it can have a real good impact on the system. But wind is not the answer to be all. None of them are. They all have their own little flaws. But if you start looking at it as a mix of fuel, it comes together very nicely. Okay.
On the sale of the tax credits, are you saying that individual seabed developers in Minnesota have to do their own syndication of tax credits? And the reason I ask that question, we've been building low and moderate income housing under parallel tax codes for almost 20 years in Nebraska. But a few developers go out and look for a tax credit purchaser. Instead, they sell their tax credits to a not-for-profit, 501c3 tax credit syndicator who has already lined up the banks and the insurance companies and virtual banks and everybody else, who is sort of expressing a permanent demand for those dollar-to-dollar tax credits. So how do you syndicate your tax credits in Minnesota? Do you do it individually or do you use a not-for-profit syndicator?
All of the above. In fact, there's a couple different models that we've done with. And there are some syndicators that can help you aggregate and find equity partners. There's investment houses out there that have people, entities that are looking for ways to invest their capital in a meaningful way. There's socially responsible funds that are very active in looking at how can we invest into the social health of our planet and our society. And so there's all these different entities out there that are interested in utilizing these credits in different ways. And so there are aggregators, and then there's, we have done projects where if you spread the credits out